Hey, welcome in everybody. It is Friday evening, and I'm here to break down the EU Masters semifinal slate. Sadly, this likely will be the last League of Legends slate we see for a number of weeks as all the spring splits and tournaments are wrapping up. There is going to be a preseason tournament for the LPL and LCK during the last week of May, so that'll probably be the next League of Legends action we see on DraftKings. So let's make the most of this slate. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this video tonight. I really look closely at all the player stats here, and there's some really good data now that we've played quite a few matches. So I'm excited for the video. One quick note, DraftKings just added Korean League Soccer. Soccer is my bread and butter. It's my favorite sport to play and break down. So moving forward, I will have some content coming out for that. Unfortunately, tonight they gave us like 5 or 6 hours notice about this slate, so I don't have time to get something out. But moving forward, look for that. All right, let's get started on this semifinal slate. We've got the Polish League and the French League, the only two leagues left here in the EU Masters. We've got Rogue from the Polish League and LDLC from the French League in one matchup, and then Kick from the Polish League and Movistar Riders from the French League facing off against them. As you can tell by the implied win percentages over here, these are basically coin flips. That the talent is pretty even in these games, so I think it's going to be more about which team can make the right strategical adjustments and get their drafts right in these games. So it's going to be a best of three series for both of these matches here, just like it was in the quarterfinal. If we're looking at the team stats thus far, I mean, everything is pretty similar here. And of course, that's probably not surprising since these are the four teams remaining, but they're all in the neighborhood of 14, 15 kills, and they're all allowing around 10, 11, 12 deaths per game. So they're all kind of in the same boat here, and so the pace of all four of these teams is about equal. So there's not, neither of these matches really stands out as definitely being the higher paced match. I mean, the Kick Movie Star is a little bit higher, but not enough where I'm ready to say, okay, that's the match that we have to focus on. And then finally, I've got two stats I like: tower differential 15 minutes in and gold differential 15 minutes in. Again, all of these teams are fairly solid in this regard, although the biggest discrepancy is seen here with Kick and Movie Star. I mentioned during the quarterfinal slate that I thought one way Kick could win that series is if they got out to some early leads. That's exactly what they did. So look for that again. If Kick is able to be aggressive and establish early leads, they could certainly come out on top in this series. And of course, the line reflects that because it's essentially a coin flip. So I hate to say it again, but I don't have a strong read on who I think is going to win both of these series. Based on the history we have, I do feel like we could see both of these go to the final three games. I'm just not sure who's going to come out on top. And for that reason, I will have exposure to all four teams, and I am going to worry more about, I'm going to stack this every way I can, and I'm going to worry more about picking the optimal plays from each team. In other words, if a team does win the series, I'm going to look for the players that are going to score most of the fantasy points if that does occur. So this is interesting for these matchups because actually in both of these matchups, the teams have played each other 3 times already because they were in the group stage and then went to tiebreakers. So we're starting with Rogue and LDLC up top. It's both teams handily split the first 2 games, and then LDLC came out on top in the third match in a very close one. And these are just the number of kills that each team got in the matchup. Interesting because we saw a similar thing between Kick and Movistar, two very matches, two matches that weren't close the first time around, split, and then that final match they actually ended 10-10 on kills, although Movistar did come out on top there. So, at least that would indicate to me that we could see two very closely fought series here. So that should be exciting to watch if nothing else. I also noted the kill leader and assist leader for each game. I'll go through them quickly. Hades and Yellowstar are the ADC and SUP for LDLC, so no surprise there. When Rogue came out on top, no surprise it was the ADC and SUP for them. And then finally in that last match, it was Hades, the ADC again, or they've been calling him Hades, but however you like to say it. And then Tinks, the jungler, and I'm going to talk about Tinks quite a bit when we get into players, because I think he's probably the strongest jungler or close with Schlatan from Kick. Down here in the Kick and Movistar series, a little bit different. The kill leader was Madislav for Kick, the mid, and the assist leader was the jungler Schlatan. So again, more on that to come later. In the two Movistar wins, it was Java and Rux who were the ADC and SUP. So that lane is kind of where they were able to establish themselves and come out on top. So you might, if whatever team wins the series, you might expect similar players to come up here as the ones that got more of the kills and assists and made it happen. All right, now I'm going to go through each team and talk about which plays I like. All right, this is Rogue to start with. So I probably need to move this, don't I? All right, that's better. All right, Rogue. I have a lot of interest in their top Shigenda, I believe is how you say it. So this column here is what they averaged in team wins thus far in EU Masters. This is what their opponent has allowed in losses to that position. And then this is the low and high scores for the player during their wins. So it kind of gives us an idea of their potential floor in a win and their potential ceiling in a win. All right, so back to Shigenda. He is perhaps the best option on this slate as far as the top position. He has the highest floor in his team and has been the most consistent. He has the highest kill death assist ratio in the entire EU Masters for any position, 6.7. And then he's only dying 1.6 times per game, which is really solid. And come to think of it, I don't think that's the highest KDA in the entire Masters. I think that's the highest KDA for the top position, but nonetheless, still very impressive. The jungler for Rogue, Zanzara, he's got the lowest average on the team, the lowest floor and wins thus far. So I'm not super excited about him. The only caveat is that he did have his ceiling game in their win against LDLC when he put up nearly 38 points. So he has shown the ability to perform well against LDLC, but it does not look like Rogue typically likes to get him going, as compared to some of their other players. He's only averaging 1.8 kills per match, which is second worst at the jungler position in the entire EU Masters. So Zanzara, while he has showed that ceiling previously against LDLC, I'm probably I will have some exposure to him, but it's going to be pretty minimal. All right, next we're going to move to Checkload, the mid. He's got the highest average on the team, 33 in wins, that is. He's got the highest KDA for mids in the entire EU Masters. So that's two players now who top that stat in the entire EU Masters for their position, which really bodes well for Rogue. LDLC actually happens to be fairly weak against the mid position, which helps him as well. Um, and then again, Sheckload's only dying 1.3 times per game, which is really solid. And that's second best at the mid position in all of the EU Masters. All right, let's move on to the ADC, Woolite. He's got the second best average on the team. He's had the best ceiling game at 49, which is like 8 points better than anyone else on the team. LDLC is also, as you can see by the red bar here, the weakest against the ADC position in terms of allowing fantasy points. And then not only is Woolite averaging the most kills for Rogue, he's averaging the second most assists. So if Rogue's going to win this series, there's a very good chance that Woolite's going to be the highest scorer. Finally, his support, Mystique's here. He's actually had the second highest ceiling game at 41.7. And he's averaging the second most assists for the support position in all of the EU Masters. So he's a really strong play to pair with Woolite. And obviously, there's a high correlation there. All right, let's slide this over and move on to their opponent, LDLC. All right. All right, the top for LDLC is Bando. He's got the second best floor on the team and actually averages more than the mid and sub position on the team. So given where his price will probably be, he's a decent value. The downside with Bando is that he dies the second most of all tops in the EU Masters, and he's going up against a very good player in Shigenda. So I do have some concern there that, you know, even if they won this series 2-1, he could get hammered in that loss and have a lot of deaths and have a pretty poor score. So just something to look out for. Tinks, the jungler, has pretty much been a beast, and if they do win this series, I think he will be a big reason. He's got the highest average on the team in wins, the highest floor, and the second highest ceiling in wins. Rogue also gives up the second most fantasy points to the jungler position in their losses thus far. Again, that's a small sample size, but just something that's kind of another feather in the cap of Tinks there. Tinks also leads all junglers in the EU Masters in average kills per game. I have a thought that possibly, even if they were to lose this series 2-1, you could see Tinks outscore Zanzara. I don't think it's like outside of the realm of possibility. Although I will mention that Tinks did have his lowest score of the entire tournament when Rogue lost to LDLC. So just something to keep in mind. Vethio, I may be butchering that one too, is the mid on the team. He's got the second lowest average in their wins, the second lowest ceiling. I'm not really sure there's a reason to pay for him when you could just get Bando or Yellow Star for less money. But if you are picking the winning team, obviously out of LDLC and Rogue, it's going to need to be Checkload or Vethio. I would prefer Checkload, but obviously if Vethio is on the winning side here, he could outscore him. All right. The ADC, as I already mentioned, for LDLC is Hades or Hades. I believe it's Hades. I'm going to go with that. He leads the team in average and ceiling. We can see there's a lot of dark green right here. He's been ridiculous. He's only died one time in this entire tournament. So his KDA of 29.3 leads the EU Masters by something crazy like 18 or 19. If LDLC wins this series, there's a very good chance, that he's going to have the most kills here. Finally, his support is Yellow Star over here. Um, Yellow Star is basically in the bottom of every statistical category. And this is actually where Rogue allow the fewest points. Not necessarily surprising that it's a support position, but worth mentioning. Um, it, I kind of get the impression, and I haven't watched enough to confirm this, but it seems like his job is basically just to go out there and protect Hades at all costs. So probably not a super high upside play, which you can actually see here because his best score was only 28, which is lowest on the team. All right, moving on to kick. As we know, kick are kind of the darling or the Cinderella of this tournament, but at this point, I mean, they're a real contender to go on and win this thing. They had a really impressive series against Gamers Origin. Like I said, they like to get out to an early lead and be aggressive, and I think that's what they'll try to do here. So Ibo was an absolute beast in the quarterfinal on the Aatrox champion. He was, largely responsible for the 2 wins that they were able to get. This is kind of incredible because after those 2 matches they won, he's actually averaging the same as the ADC Pookie style. So that's really significant as a top there. I haven't checked the salaries, but he's probably going to be the second cheapest player for kick. So definitely somebody to look at. He leads the top position in the entire EU Masters for kills a game at 3.8. Okay, Schlatan, the jungler. I think he's maybe not quite at the level of Tinks, but he's right up there. He's shown 50-point upside already. Of course, that came against a really shitty Team Singularity, but nonetheless, he's got that upside. Also, jungler is the position that Movistar happened to allow the second most fantasy points to in their losses thus far. So another thing that kind of works in his favor. Okay, Matislav. It's a really interesting one. He is the mid for kick. He has the lowest average and has had the lowest ceiling in wins thus far. But Movistar allows the most points to the mid position, as you can see by this red bar in the center, by a good margin. And he performed pretty well in the wins against Movistar, or in the 1 win against Movistar during the group stage. So, although I don't love him as a player, just based on the way Movistar operates, if Kick come out with 2 wins here, he actually might perform pretty well. So I'm certainly not going to rule him out. All right, Pookie style. Everybody knows about him. He's got the highest average, floor, and ceiling in the team wins thus far. The only downside for him, I would say, is that Movistar have held the ADC position in check during their losses, but again, this is a small sample size, so I'm not going to put a huge amount of stock into that. I think Pookie style can absolutely produce if Kick comes out on top here. Finally, Roxo, the support. He had the second highest ceiling game on the team thus far at 54.5. Other than that, he's been kind of mundane, the lowest average and lowest floor in the team. And again, no surprise here, but this is the position that Movistar allows the fewest points to. So I don't think this is, the series where he's going to pop off with a 50-point game. But if you're going to play Pookie style, he obviously makes sense to pair there because of the correlation. All right, last but not least, we've got Movistar here. Beansu, lowest average in wins, lowest floor in wins, lowest ceiling in wins. I think that's all I need to say. This is going back to Ibo here, I think Ibo could own him in this series. So not super excited about playing Beansu. Elyoya, the jungler, I think the biggest thing in his favor is probably that Kick is allowing the second most fantasy points to that position in their losses. They've had 3 losses, so it's a little better sample size than some of the other teams that remain at this point. Um, okay, at the mid position is Zico. None of the other mids on the slate are really that sexy, so they're not like the high upside guys. So he is perhaps the best option, especially obviously if Movistar come out on top in this series, he's averaging the second most points, so he's going to be a player I want in my Movistar stacks. But the one player I will prioritize over him is Java or Hava. This guy crushed it in the quarterfinal. Lots of dark green here. He's averaging the most points and wins. He's had the highest floor and the highest ceiling game. And wouldn't you know, this is where Kick is allowing the most fantasy points to an opposing position. So if Movistar wins this series, that is the man that is going to score the most points and probably the one that you want to try to captain if you can fit it salary wise. But again, I haven't looked at the salary, so I'm not 100% sure about that. Last but not least is Rux. Uh, Rux actually has had the highest ceiling game with 50 and a half. When Hava's playing well, Rux is going to crush it with assists. He's leading the support position in assists per game. So if you're going to stack Movistar, I don't really see how you can get away from Hava and Rux because those guys are both going to produce, as well as Zico, I think. All right, that is going to do it for the breakdown. I've got to go and start researching some Korean League soccer. I will try to post something on Twitter if I have enough time. Good luck on the final EU Masters slate. Like I said, I'm going to stack it every way. I think if you focus on the plays that the data indicates should be the ones scoring the most points and wins, that should serve you well here. All right, until next time, good luck out there, and I hope you crush it on the final League of Legends slate we will probably see for some time.